Besides establishing a Congress with two houses, the Constitution also determined the qualifications a person must have to be elected to each of these houses. Members of the House of Representatives must be at least 25 years old. They have to have been United States citizens for at least 7 years, and they must be residents of the states from which they are elected. The qualifications for the Senate are slightly different. Members of the Senate must be at least 30 as opposed to 25. Senators also have to have been United States citizens for at least 9 years rather than 7. And senators must be residents of the states from which they are elected. The authors of the Constitution also specified how long members of the Senate and House could serve before they have to run for election again. Senators serve for terms of 6 years. This is even longer than the 4-year term a president serves. Because of their long terms in office, senators are less affected by the pressures of running for re-election than most other elected officials. The situation is different in the House. According to the Constitution, a representative can serve for only 2-year terms. This means that every 2 years, representatives have to campaign for re-election, and voters can express their opinions about how their representatives are doing. Representatives and senators also differ in terms of which people in their state they represent. Take Kansas, for example. The 2 senators from Kansas represent all the people in their state. But a member of the House of Representatives represents only the people in a single congressional district. Kansas, for example, has 4 congressional districts with 1 representative for each district. In large states like New York and California, senators represent many different kinds of people, from those living in large cities, to people in the suburbs, to farmers and others living in rural areas. But because a member of the House represents only a single congressional district, he or she is likely to be the person in the federal government most sensitive to local issues and problems.
The Founding Fathers decided on a bicameral legislature, the House and the Senate, first of all, so that each would check the other. But from their perspective, the House would represent the principle of freedom. It's closer to the people. The people can throw the members of the House out on a regular basis every 2 years. Smaller groups of people choose House members. The Senate reflects the principle of stability. The Senate terms are longer, 6 years, and so it's harder to get rid of the senators and to gain control of the whole Senate in any given election year, because only a third of the Senate is up for re-election at any given time.
Also in 1789, senators were elected by state legislatures. They were not directly elected at all by the people, and this was a consciously designed effort to have the Senate not so closely tied to popular whims and popular winds of the day. This was done precisely because there was some suspicion of too much democracy and the idea that the Senate would be a body that would behave differently as well.
Besides establishing how senators and members of the House are elected and whom they represent, the authors of the Constitution determined what powers the legislative branch has. The Constitution gave Congress the power to regulate trade and commerce with other countries. It gave Congress the power to raise and support an army and navy and to declare war. It also gave Congress the power to establish a post office. There are some powers in the Constitution that were granted to the House of Representatives alone. Only the House can write laws that determine how to raise money through taxes. While it is not a power that is explicitly granted in the Constitution, only the House of Representatives has the power to originate bills that authorize or appropriate the money that the federal government needs to operate its programs. For example, the House must appropriate money to build new highways, or to build and launch space probes to explore other planets. The Senate, too, has some powers that belong to it alone. The Senate has the power to approve or reject treaties that the President has made with other countries. For example, in 1987, President Ronald Reagan signed a treaty with Mikhail Gorbachev of what was then the Soviet Union to limit nuclear weapons in Europe. But before this treaty could go into effect, it had to be ratified or approved by the Senate. The Senate also has the power to confirm and reject presidential appointments to important posts in the executive branch. For instance, after George W. Bush was elected in 2000, he appointed Colin Powell to be Secretary of State of the United States. But before Powell could have the job, he first had to be questioned by a special Senate committee and then approved by the whole Senate. The Constitution gives still other powers to both the House and the Senate. One clause in the Constitution states that Congress has the power to make all laws that shall be necessary and proper. This clause is often called the Elastic Clause because it gives Congress the power to write laws on many different things that are not specifically mentioned in the Constitution. In the 1970s and 80s, for example, Congress passed a series of environmental laws designed to protect the quality of our air and water. Among other things, these laws restricted the amount of poisonous chemicals that factories could release into rivers, lakes, and oceans, and harmful gases that power plants and factories could release into the atmosphere. Nothing in the Constitution specifically gave Congress this power. However, the Constitution does say that one purpose of the federal government is to promote the general welfare of the American people. Supporters of environmental laws could argue that these laws were necessary and proper to promote our general welfare by helping make our environment cleaner and safer. Over the years, Congress has passed thousands of laws never specifically imagined by the people who wrote the Constitution. These laws affect many aspects of our lives. There are federal laws that make sure our food is safe to eat. There are laws that provide help to schools in order to support education. There are laws to make airplanes and other forms of transportation safe. Making a law, however, is not an easy process. A law starts out as a bill. A bill is simply a law that someone proposes. Any member of Congress, either a senator or a representative, can introduce a bill. But in order to become a law, a bill must be voted on and passed by both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Before a bill is voted on, however, it is usually reviewed by different committees in both the House and Senate. A committee usually refers the bill to a smaller subcommittee. The subcommittee holds special meetings to examine the bill. Among other things, witnesses are called to testify for and against the bill, or to argue for changes in the bill to make it better. Based on these meetings, the subcommittee or committee might rewrite the bill. Or the committee members might decide they don't like the bill and vote against it. They might also kill the bill by simply not voting on it at all. If a bill is accepted by committees in the House and Senate, however, it still needs to be approved by members of both branches of Congress. Representatives and senators debate the merits of the bill before voting to approve or reject it. But even when a bill survives this process, a bill approved by the House may end up being different from the one passed by the Senate. If this happens, a joint committee made up of several members from both the House and Senate iron out the differences in the two versions of the bill. This joint committee is called a conference committee. If they can agree, the bill goes back to both the House and Senate for another vote. If a majority in each passes the bill, however, it still doesn't become law. The bill is then sent to the President. If the President signs it, then it becomes law. He can also allow it to become law by not acting on it within 10 days. But the President can also veto a bill. A veto prohibits the bill from becoming law. The President then sends it back to Congress with an explanation of why he vetoed it. Congress can override a presidential veto, but in order to do this, 2/3 of the members of both the House and Senate must vote in favor of making the bill a law. It is no wonder that out of the thousands of bills that are introduced in Congress each year, only a few hundred may survive this long, hard process